Despite their size, mosquitoes are by far the deadliest animals on Earth, responsible for over 1 billion deaths throughout human history. Today, the Aedes mosquito continues to pose a significant threat by spreading diseases like dengue, Zika, and yellow fever to millions. There are two species that collectively are called the Aedes mosquitoes, Aedes aegypti and Aedes albopictus.
Both belong to the phylum Arthropoda, class Insecta, and order Diptera. Aedes aegypti is commonly referred to as the yellow fever mosquito and is known for spreading dengue, Zika, and yellow fever. Aedes albopictus is known as the Asian tiger mosquito and also spreads dengue and yellow fever. It also can transmit filarial nematodes. Other hematophagous arthropods include ticks, fleas, and kissing bugs. All of these feed on human blood and in doing so can transmit viruses, bacteria, protozoa, and parasites.
The next topic we're going to discuss is epidemiology. The three diseases we're going to talk about today are yellow fever, dengue fever, and Zika. The first disease we'll cover is yellow fever. The people who are most vulnerable are those who are unvaccinated. Yearly, there are about 200,000 cases and 30,000 deaths, 90% of these cases being in Africa. The most severe symptoms are jaundice, which is yellowing of the skin and whites of the eyes, organ failure, bleeding from the nose, mouth, and gums, and severe vomiting.
From the moment the mosquito bites, there is an incubation period of about 3 to 6 days. Phase 1 then begins where fever, headache, vomiting, loss of appetite are usually experienced by the victim. Then the victim goes into toxic phase where the more severe symptoms that we talked about earlier are experienced.
The dengue virus infects up to 400 million people annually, most commonly in densely populated tropical areas. Approximately 100 million of those will get sick from an infection, and 40,000 die each year, most deaths being children or the elderly. Symptoms include rash, vomiting, difficulty breathing, blood and vomit in stool, and organ failure. The best prevention method is getting vaccinated.
The last disease we're going to talk about is Zika. Pregnant women and fetuses are most vulnerable. Over 80 countries have reported cases of Zika, and since 2015, over 900,000 suspected cases have been reported. In adults, symptoms are mild and typically include mild fever, rash, joint pain, and sometimes conjunctivitis. For pregnant women, Zika puts fetuses at high risk of severe birth defects, including microcephaly, which can cause delayed development, seizures, and other neurological issues.
The Aedes mosquito thrives in artificial water containers, which are buckets, cisterns, discarded tires, flower pots, or bottle caps, which are sites that tend to be right next to people's homes for the mosquito's entire life cycle. Every blood meal is needed for their egg development, so a single female may bed multiple humans during one gonotrophic cycle, acquiring the virus from an infected person and spreading it after the virus incubates. The ecological chain of events is wild primates to mosquitoes to humans to urban mosquitoes to more humans. First, the female Aedes mosquito contracts yellow fever virus through feeding on the blood of an infected human or monkey, which the virus then spends around 9 to 12 days replicating itself before it travels to the mosquito's salivary glands. When the mosquito feeds on its next victim, its proboscis transports the yellow fever into the dermis of the human. Once injected, the virus targets the immune cells of the human, specifically the dendritic cells. The virus binds to the surface receptors and enters the cell through the process of receptor-mediated endocytosis, where it undergoes RNA genome translation into a polyprotein and then goes to the target organs.
Beyond spraying insect repellent and avoiding wild vegetation, scientists and researchers are actively searching for the most effective and environmentally responsible ways to protect people from diseases carried by the Aedes mosquitoes. A few solutions include the sterile insect technique, Wolbachia bacteria, and the self-limiting gene. All of these solutions are based on lab-raised mosquitoes, but the effects of these solutions vary. The sterile insect technique raises male mosquitoes to be sterile, and these sterile males are released into the wild and limit viable offspring. The males that are raised with Wolbachia bacteria are also released and will mate with females in the wild, but the mismatched bacteria between the male's Wolbachia bacteria and the female's naturally occurring bacteria will result in eggs that do not hatch. The male mosquitoes that are bred with the self-limiting gene produce offspring that will not survive to adulthood.
From there, a type of AI was used known as computer vision to scan the city for places of attraction and record where they were located. Using the data from the AI, researchers conducted 2 different types of suitability indicators known as microhabitat indicators dedicated to the smaller breeding sites close to humans and macrohabitat indicators which focus on the larger patterns like population density, weather, and land use. Then the Bayesian spatiotemporal model was created, which predicts where the mosquito eggs and larvae are most likely to appear. The model was then tested by comparing its results with the results of the ovitrap and turned out to be super accurate, explaining about 72% of the egg counts and 74% of the larval counts. Using the data, the researchers created very detailed seasonal maps that showed the mosquito breeding risk across the city, which are important tools to predict the mosquito hotspots in affected cities and help control the mosquito population in a more effective way.